Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. I do not. Let's see.
Hi, John.
Greetings.
Hey, John. How's it going? Hey, Chris.
Good. So Captain Chris Cooney, Jared Wise, we have on live. Amazing.
Good morning.
Good morning and afternoon if you're East Coast to everyone. Welcome to the weekly panel discussions for We Are J6 and our debut live stream event post-pardon, which is pretty exciting. Everyone will hopefully bear with me for a moment while I get the live stream sort of on track here. This is a shift in how we've handled the technology on the back end. We should have Dr. Gold joining us momentarily here as well. And we may get a few other people as we move along. Let's see. You guys are able to see the chat?
Yes.
Okay. Chat seems to be working, I think. We should be connected via a live stream link to wearej6.com, as well as a live stream broadcast that's also playing on the We Are J6 account on X and also on YouTube. Just FYI. And let's see what else I'm missing here. Just realized I had muted myself. That's always helpful. There we go. Thank you. And Dr. Gold, just be aware of your audio volume levels there. Okay. All right. I'm gonna kick this off officially. And I have actually no idea how many folks have joined us so far, but I know we've got plenty of people here and more coming in on the way. So we'll get this going. Heavenly Father, we are grateful and honored and excited about this moment in time. A week ago, this group was here virtually connected and praying to you about the upcoming inauguration and what was at stake. And God, we specifically prayed that you would lead and guide and empower President Trump to do the right thing, to do what was right and just and necessary for our country overall, and of course, specifically to do the right thing for January 6th and the the patriots, the citizens who have endured and have suffered so greatly through this period. And God, you clearly answered that prayer in the most incredible way. And I think it's appropriate and important for us to acknowledge that and to thank you, God. You answer prayers, and there's no greater proof in my mind and in my life right now than the incredible blanket pardon exoneration of J6 and the Americans involved in that. And we're just very grateful. We're very excited for this incredible opportunity to launch the new golden age of America, and on J6 to really turn a corner and reset this story back to the truth, as well as continuing to lean on you, God, and to discuss and support amongst each other how to accomplish this mission of restorative justice, what it means, what's involved, and how we can be successful as we remain humble and dedicated and diligent and in pursuit of you and your truth in our country and in our lives. And with that, we just thank you, God, and bless this in your name. Amen. And Dr. Gold, are you on? You're good. Is your audio working?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Gold, are you online?
Yes. Oh, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sure. Did you want me to start? Or?
Yeah, would you mind?
Oh, I see. Sure, no problem. First of all, Sarah, big week for you. So happy, and I'm very happy to make the acquaintance of Jared and Captain Chris. It's wonderful to see you both. I don't want to get emotional. We've had enough emotion. But I didn't know I was going to feel emotional. It's a big day. It's a big day. So thank you for joining us. Okay, I'm just going to recap that we started this a few weeks ago. We started meeting on Saturdays at noon, and the purpose is to correct as much as humanly possible the wrongs that have happened in the last 4 years. Some of the wrongs are to us as individuals. Every one of us has an individual painful story, some truly horrific, but all of them terrible. And the details matter, and the people need to hear about the details. So there's individual harms that have to be addressed, and then there's a national harm that happened to our nation as a result of living in lie and untruth. The nation cannot survive if it's on a bedrock of falsity. So some of you have heard me compare what happened to politically conservative Americans as very analogous to what happened to Japanese Americans in the 1940s. We saw a threat in the 40s, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Our nation got very worried. They then took up Japanese Americans and threw them in a camp. And our nation eventually recognized that that was the wrong thing to do. But if our nation hadn't recognized that was the wrong thing to do, we'd be a different nation. Same, I believe, is true here. If our nation doesn't look straight in the eye as to what the federal government did to her own citizens, we really can't move forward in truth. So there's kind of two parts to this, which is why we took that term restorative justice. We are well aware that leftists like to abrogate terminology or to steal terminology for themselves. It doesn't matter. It is restorative justice to what we're seeking. So how does that look? Honestly, it's going to evolve over time. A few things are for sure. One is that the public relations messaging of what happened to people on this call is still an untold story for most Americans. There are good movies out there. For those of you who recently got out of prison, you'll be happy to know that there really are some good movies that were done. Epoch Times did a good movie. Capital Punishment was good. War on Truth was good. There are probably 5 or 6 good movies that have documented it. But for example, most of them have not been widely seen. Relating the personal stories that happen to us is going to be extremely popular with the public and extremely important in making sure that the public understands and that policymakers understand and that there's a historical record. So one of the things we're definitely doing on We Are J6 is going to provide a way to put up people's stories. That's no matter what else we decide to do. Related to that, but as backup to that, we want the media to cover these stories. So not only will we have it up on We Are J6, we all will then have a reference point that in any public remarks we do, we will tell the media, oh, go to We Are J6 and watch these vignettes of what happened to your neighbors, your brothers, your sisters, and your fathers and uncles, right? Watch it. So that's something that we want to promote in the media. So that's kind of under the comms sort of department. So that's one thing that has to happen. We don't know where that will lead. We hope that leads to a shift in the national understanding of what happened. Other things that have to happen are legal things that will help the nation. And that's really the mission of politicians and policymakers that are in place, but we can support that with grassroots activism. I myself, as a lawyer, am extremely interested in bringing the judges to justice. That the only thing you can really do to judges is an impeachment hearing. I mean, unless they've committed an out crime, and I'm not alleging that, but they absolutely can be brought up on impeachment hearings. To do that, though, we have to be extremely specific. It's not just that they were biased and difficult and horrendous. There needs to be specific words that they said to a specific defendant. I believe that evidence exists. It existed for me at my sentencing. John Strand, my co-defendant at trial, our judge said things that are inconsistent with being a judge. I'm sure that happened to many of you, even things that are common, and I think so obvious we might miss them. But if a judge called you an insurrectionist from the bench, I believe he could be brought up as one of the judges at an impeachment hearing. That's just wholly inappropriate. You're not allowed to prejudge a defendant, and nobody was charged with insurrection. So the examples might be kind of obvious right there in your face. But what we need is every person who thinks this happened to them at their trial or their sentencing, words that a judge said from the bench, we need the transcript of that. So you'll have to go back and look at it and reflect on it. I would like to work with a few volunteers on this, because some people, they're going to have to go through their transcript, but we also can use AI to look for specific words. It's not going to be so helpful, but obviously looking for the word insurrection would be helpful. But specific cases, in my case, my judge was much too careful to say something like that, but he said other things that were lies, and we will need the defendants themselves to know about it and then go through their own transcript and then submit the transcript. I would like to get 15 judges hauled up in front of Congress on an impeachment hearing. Related to that is really doing the same thing to the prosecutors. I'm personally more focused on the judges because they're top of the pile, and it scares everybody underneath if they get dinged. And so I think a lot of bang for the buck. I think we'll get a lot of reward on the effort. It's so horrific that some of the things the judges said, whereas I think the American public might look at some of the lies the prosecutors said. And yes, it's important, but I don't think it's as moving of the cultural needle as to discover that a judge has literally prejudged a defendant. It's unbelievable. So I ask for a few volunteers to help me in that space, people who are really want to be focused on that legal issue. And I ask for everybody to go through and think through if they are a particular defendant who might have that in their transcript. That's something we all can do to move the needle nationally, that we as grassroots people can do. And then I'd say the third thing is what we can do for ourselves to correct the harm. And that's going to have to look like something, if not a lawsuit, then pre-lawsuit, but is certainly prepping for a lawsuit against the bad guys. Bad guys being the DOJ, FBI, there are others. I mean, there's BOP, but it's different. Now, we obviously need attorneys to help us with that. John, myself, Brandon, Derek, we have spoken to some attorneys. There has been no definite movement or decision on that front, partly due to the lawyers' schedule and partly due to the thing that came out this week, and the lawyers really just kind of want to see the lay of the land. Not giving legal advice, but my opinion is that it was good to not even think about what the individual legal response would be until we saw the pardon. We now know for sure that the president sees it our way. I say that because a week ago, we were not certain that the president would pardon everyone. I understand 16 people were commuted only, but the fact that he pardoned everyone and pardoned or commuted everybody completely and said that he may even pardon those he commuted but wanted to look at them is actually a stunningly, it's the strongest statement we could have gotten from the president. To me, that means, and by the way, if you all don't know this, I have a good friend, Dr. Eitan Haim, who is a whistleblower on a transgender medical mutilation case in Texas. Some of you surely know this story. The Department of Justice went after him, the same as they went after me on my COVID stuff. And he was absolutely being tortured. It was unbelievable. Just yesterday, Dr. Eitanheim got assistance from Senator Josh Hawley, who just yesterday, about 30 hours ago, leaned on the president to reverse this injustice against this whistleblower doctor. And it all happened literally within 2 hours. The DOJ dropped this case that they billed against this whistleblower doctor for the past 2 years. So he's willing to act. He's willing to act fast from a political realm. So I think the proper legal approach is going to look something like, we have drafted a serious letter of the harms that have happened to us, and it goes to the right place. I'm told that that's the Federal Tort Claims Act. I forgot, I have it written down somewhere, but it has to kind of go through the food chain. But my hope would be, as it goes there, we really just sit down to a settlement conference. Towards making that legal document, whichever lawyer ends up being hired, we have to have listed out what our harms are. And Brandon Struck did most of the legwork on that. We have a 5-page document of the various types of harms people endured. Everything from the SWAT, and we'll circulate that to people just in case we've missed a few things. But it's pretty, I think there's 30 or 40 harms listed. Anything from, the violent SWAT team arrest to being debanked, deplatformed, losing professional opportunities, kids being traumatized, death, miscarriage, abuse by the BOP, imprisonment, solitary, all that. We have a long list. The point being that if this were to turn into class action, and I forgot to say that prior to last week, most lawyers we spoke with did not think a class action was so likely because we all have different facts on our case. My opinion now, looking at how Trump pardoned and commuted everyone, I kind of think the president did make a class of Jason. I feel better about that. So anyway, however it turns out, having this list of harms, if it does proceed as a class action, it kind of means, ultimately you'll put a number next to the harm. And if you've suffered this, you would get that. I mean, that would be the request. That would kind of be the framework. But mostly, I just want this group to grow and grow and grow, because we have to get the message out. We have to put the words out. Whatever individual settlement might come is going to be at least somewhat related to how much empathy the American people have for our situation. And no one could hear our stories and not be moved. No one can hear it. And also, just from knowing the diversity of harms that we suffered, people don't realize the range of harms, that you lost your bank accounts, that you lost your job, that in my case, my professional licenses were threatened, and I spent an absolute fortune to get, to save them. I mean, there's just a range of stories. So I'll just close by saying we're looking for restorative justice as defined by moving the national understanding of the issue of J6 by putting personal stories directly in front of the American people through video and written testimony that will live on this site, and all of us will talk about it every media opportunity we get. Number two, looking for legal policy ways that we as grassroots activists can correct some of the institutional harms done by the DOJ and the judiciary, and perhaps others, perhaps the FBI as well. But for me personally, the DOJ and the prosecutors, that we can ask Congress to look at that. But I would say, you're right, the FBI too. And the third is, what would a legal demand on our friendly administration look like? Who would we hire? What would it look like? Who would it include, et cetera? And we intend to be completely open with everybody. There's no hidden information that John, Brandon, Sarah, Derek, that we have that we're not sharing with people. We just can't have everybody talk at the same time because it's difficult, but there is nothing going on, quote, behind the scenes. We're being as transparent as possible, and we welcome all J6ers to join us. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gold. That was great. I just want to quickly emphasize a couple points. Number one, it is open to all, and it is incredibly important that we continue to expand the umbrella of this We Are J6 community and the movement. We're so much more powerful together than we are separate and divided. That's in general true, but really specifically so in this case, both in terms of sharing and amplifying the stories so that we win on the public messaging and just presenting the story and educating the public about these things. And then, of course, also on the legal end of things where it gets very complex and nuanced, the larger and more solid and unified we are, the more successful we'll definitely be. So I just want to encourage everyone to continue over the course of this next week, just sharing this message and really encouraging everyone possible to join us. As a former defendant and now exonerated patriot, if you had a J6 case, and then also you can register and support as an advocate on those issues. Like Dr. Gold mentioned, the class action concept, people talk about it a lot. There are a lot of challenges, but that doesn't mean it's not necessarily in the mix at maybe various levels. But it is very complex, and it's very easy to get it wrong, and it's very easy to fail. And we don't need any more failure. We need success for everybody. So that's another reason that we're really strongly encouraging you to consider what we're saying and how we're approaching this with this group, and to encourage everyone to join together here. Go ahead, Dr. Gold.
I just want to say I'm scanning through the questions, and I know that this is going to gear up. We're all itching to go, but we're trying to be methodical and not lose and just win the most for all of us. I know for myself, the area that I'm going to concentrate the most on is the judges and the prosecutors, or FBI. I know less about that, but it's the policy part. That just happens to be personally the thing that interests me the most. Other people will be more interested in the comms and the videos, testimonials. Everybody has their interest. Everybody has their strength. Somebody here, Chad, said, I'm a software engineer with AI experience. I can right away think I would like someone with AI experience to go through the transcripts and help me pull out those sentences, right? So I know that for me, I am going to be seeking probably 3 people that would be like a little subgroup to help us craft for our group the best legal, right? So I just want to say at the front, there's no insult if you're picked, you're not picked, whatever, but that's what I will need going forward over the next few weeks, is a small little group of 3 people who feel like they've got the interest, the talent, the time to work on that. And I'm sure John in the comms direction will probably want some people to help as well. So I'm just throwing that out there, that we want to involve everyone, but we do need a few core people who want to work on certain things. Thank you.
Captain Cooney, don't forget your question. Real quickly, I want to ask Dr. Gold to clarify a point about the table of harms and substantiating specific harms for each and every person. We have already sent out an email from We Are J6 to the general group. I hope most of you have seen it. It gave instructions for how to assemble a persecution testimonial video. We'll continue to send that email out multiple times just to remind people and to continue to expand the group. And so as soon as you're able to work on that and submit that through the website, that would be fantastic. We also plan to follow that up with another email advising you of what we're looking for as far as the table of harms and how to fill that out in a complete and efficient manner. Does that make sense, Dr. Gold? I just wanted to know if you wanted to give any additional clarifying comments on what people can be thinking about and doing research on over this next week or two until we kind of collect that data.
So the number one thing, I know everyone's most interested like in the table of harms, because they want to be sure your harm is heard. I'm happy to share it with the group. It's not a secret. It's just that what I really want people to be focusing on is their trial, their sentencing, and their transcript. If you think the judge said something, and it's not just that they hate us, it has to be something a judge is not allowed to prejudge and pre-decide a case, for example. So if he called you an insurrectionist, he has revealed that he has pre-decided and prejudged you. That, for me, I believe I can get Congress to do an impeachment hearing and include that guy. Right? So I need everyone to think about what happened to them. And if you think yours is that situation. In my case, he's too smart to call us an insurrectionist. But what he did say is that I showed no remorse for 5 people who died at the Capitol that day. I'm sorry, a judge is simply not allowed to be that ignorant. Do I think I can get him impeached on that? I don't think I could get him impeached on that, but I can make his life very difficult in an impeachment hearing, because that's unbelievable. And he may have said worse things. So there's only, I think, what are there, 13... I don't even know how many DC judges there are. 35?
And also don't forget, Dr. Gold, the table of harms goes beyond just the judges. I'm also talking about,
So the part I'm talking about just this second are the judges, the prosecutors, and or the FBI. The reason I'm maybe less excited about the FBI's because in a way they're following orders, but the judge is not really following orders, and the DOJ, you know, if they lied, they lied. They're not allowed. They have a special standard. A prosecutor is not allowed to lie. A prosecutor is not there to win. A prosecutor is there to seek the truth, and they're supposed to drop charges if they discover that the evidence that they have doesn't support the charges. So I think there's a lot of ways to get the prosecutors, and I think there's a lot of ways to get the judges. I kind of think it might be more difficult to get the FBI. Not against it. I'm just telling my legal opinion is it's going to be more bang for the buck with the judges and the prosecutors. But you need to think about your case. And is there something that they said? I mean, I had heard that there were criminal defense attorneys that literally were mocking their clients, right? But the harm in going after criminal defense attorneys, that's just like a one-off, you know what I mean? Whereas if we go after a judge, that's very, very dramatic. So spend the next week thinking if you're such a case. If you are, you have to get the transcript. I'm so sorry that I don't know how to get the transcripts. I know they're on Pacer, but I'm also told you can get them now for free. So if anybody knows that method and they'd like to speak up, I think that would be great to tell people. Or I heard last week that somebody had all the transcripts. Does anybody have information on that?
Go ahead, go ahead, Captain Cooney.
I just want to amplify a couple things that Dr. Gold had already been talking about, and first in particular, last statement about cases. A lot of people are having trouble getting their case transcripts because they are completely sealed because of confidential human sources. You can't get those. So that is going to take an act higher at the DOJ level. I don't know if Ed Martin's going to be able to do that, completely unsealing those cases so that we have complete transparency in a lot of those cases. And then the other thing that I want to go in on that we had talked about is coercion, right? So making sure when we're talking that matrix, that the threat, the harms, the prosecutors using threats of fear and coercion to induce defendants to plead guilty to certain charges. That really needs to be in there so that we amplify that information, because I think that occurred in the vast majority of these cases throughout the sentencing and even trials. The other thing that I want to talk about is I think it's really important. There's a number of whistleblowers out there as far as the FBI, local, state law enforcement. And I think with the environment that we're creating as we are J6, and then the current administration, is that it will allow some of those whistleblowers to come out to testify and support the mission that we are trying to accomplish. So I think that reaching out to some of those people, I can name a few right now, that we really need to encourage people to start to come forward and have them be part of our We Are J6 community as well, so that we have that transparency to the public and we also have that information to support our cause.
Huge.
Captain, may I ask a question? The transcripts that had confidential human sources, but is the entire transcript not available, or just the portions? Because I really, right now, I would like to get things judges said, so people could even get.
You cannot pull up my transcript at all. If you go to the DOJ website, my case has been completely removed from the web server. It's a 404. You can't pull it up. You can't see it. And I cannot use Pacer to pull up anything. My case is completely sealed, in particular because of the CHS. And I'm assuming that there's other people that are having those same issues, because I am trying to get those transcripts right now, and it does not allow transparency in a lot of our cases.
Okay, so I don't mean to harp on this, and I don't know what I don't know, so I don't know how many other people this could have affected. But in my case and in John Strand's case, everything was wide available to be gotten. So I think in most cases, probably it's available. I just want everyone to think about, if they have a situation where the judge or the prosecutor lied, if you think you do and you can get your transcript, please find those words. I won't be able to proceed on this otherwise.
Go ahead, Siaka.
Yeah, hey guys, how you doing? So one of the things that can be added on, this is something we tried to do in Los Angeles, going after these public officials' bonds. Every public official has a bond, and you can civilly go after it. So to Dr. Gold's point, if you find these judges made statements like that against you, sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. And does that apply to the prosecutors as well as the judges, these bonds?
If they're public servants, yes. If all public servants have bonds on them. So say like Dr. Gold said, if you find like this person called you insurrectionist, there's a criminal element that you can go to possibly, you know, trying to get them impeached. But there's also with the bond that they all have it on them, and that's through an insurance company. So now imagine all these judges, all these agents that now have bond hearings on them. That's going to drive up the price and cost of their insurance. These insurance companies don't want that to happen. So now you can go after them in a sense of a backdoor way. Exactly.
This should apply to the prosecutors who lied about us, right, Dr. Gold? I mean,
exactly.
Yes, but and by the way, I'm so happy to be on this call with people who are like so thoughtful and really thought about this for a while. Guys, everything starts with the evidence. I need the evidence. We need the evidence. The options of how to go after these people are probably much bigger than I even know. Like I didn't know what Siaka just said, right? But it all needs the evidence. It's not just chit chat. Oh, my lawyer said this and the judge. We need those transcript recordings. And this is a grassroots effort. Everyone has to do it for their own case because they'll know it best.
So definitely our general encouragement to people this week is to think through and research and start collecting data to substantiate lies and, you know, unethical and improper acts on the that were committed by public officials at any part of the process, whether it's looking at the prosecutors, whether it's looking at the judges. And also we need to collect and substantiate the specific harms that we have all suffered over the course of 4 years in terms of how we present a case for what restitution looks like in various ways. Is that?
And so to one point too, because these things I think kind of move in conjunction with each other, right? So like, for example, if this J6 committee, the new one that's out and everyone gets questioned, you find out that it was entrapment. Now that can kick in the bond, that can kick in the lawsuit or the impeachment part of it. If we are able to get to a point where from the evidence within, you know, you find within your transcript, then you can go to a senator for the impeachment or for the bond. That then helps the J6 committee to go, wow, look, these people are getting, you know, this judge has just been brought up for here. What's going on here? So a lot of things can actually help each other depending on how we move or what comes out first to a certain extent. If the government finds that they came after us falsely, that kicks everything else up just like that, right? And if we're going in and we collect enough data, like Dr. Golden, you just said, and we put it out there and people start filing against the bond, that helps the committee move even quicker too. So it helps to get to the place of they did wrong is what we're ultimately trying to get to, which opens up so much when it comes to, you know, criminally and the restitution angle of you know, what we're trying to look for.
Everything, you know how this conversation is different just because after the pardons, everything would be different once judges were called up for an impeachment hearing. The sky is really the limit at that point. That's why I'm focused on that. That's an absolute game changer. And I know based on my own transcript that we have enough to go after Cooper, but I want more after Cooper. And I honestly think some of your judges were worse than Cooper. I do not even think Cooper was the worst. Please, please, please review your transcripts. I will dedicate myself to this. Can you imagine how exciting it would be to sit and watch these impeachment hearings? Help me, please.
That would be cool. I also put the bond information in the chats for both of ours. So if anyone wants to check that out, but we need, to their point, we need the evidence because the evidence won't move any of it, or without the evidence, we can't move any of this stuff.
And does anybody know how to get the transcripts for free? I kept hearing about this. Sarah, do you have any idea about this? Or Jared?
Yeah, I just looked it up and they said if you are indigent, you can call the court. If you've been in prison and you have no income, call the court, fill out the paperwork, and they have to give you every transcript from your bond hearing through your sentencing for free.
And does anybody know of any sources where anybody has gathered transcripts, or I'm just asking, I don't know. Has anybody, if anybody does, that would be a good resource if anybody hears of such a thing.
Did you have any further thoughts on what Captain Cooney mentioned related to coercion or other acts that we need to think about highlighting and involving in the story here?
I could go over the table of harms if people want to be reassured that we've covered most of the things, or another time.
Jared, did you want to go ahead and say something? Welcome to the group, and thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I have a lot to say, but I'll try to cut it down. I haven't seen the table of harms, but there's a couple ideas that I've thought of that may or may not be included. But one is IRS audits. I'm in a Telegram group, and less than 200 people. There's 8 that I'm aware of that have been audited or received strange tax bills after this experience, myself included. So I think that's something that is worth considering to see if we can find out how many J6 defendants have been subjected to that. That may be an issue. And the second is, so as background, I'm a former FBI agent. I spent 13 years in the FBI. I left in 2017. I was sick of the corruption and political bias that came in with Jim Comey and Andy McCabe. So I left about, I guess, 8 years ago. But I think the terrorism watch list has been abused tremendously.
Yes.
And I have some insight into that in terms of my experience from the FBI. It's a bit dated, but I worked with that closely. I worked counterterrorism my entire career, except for 2 years. And I also have some evidence from information from a current FBI agent that I think he didn't know I was related to January 6th and reached out to me and gave me some information. It's like venting to me. So I've saved that. I have that for use at the proper time. But I think that's a huge factor. The terrorism watch list is supposed to be for people that are threats to aviation. It's been modified a few times since to be more broad, but it's still not meant to be a class submission. And many of us were included by default. So I think that's huge.
And that wasn't just abusing you on the airlines. That was used to torture us in improper prison placement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I wasn't in prison. I came out better than 90% of you, probably, frankly. I didn't lose my house or family or wasn't imprisoned and had fantastic attorneys. So yeah, there are things that certainly I'm not aware of, but I think it was used in many ways. I know that if you're on the terrorism watch list is maintained by what's called the Terrorism Screening Center. And there's the suspected terrorist database, which becomes the terrorism screening center watch list, which has a no-fly list, which is the famous one. You can't fly. There's the selectee list, which most of us are on, where you can fly, but you got to be
Quad S,
assaulted and searched and all that.
Yes.
But then that same information, that if you're on the selectee list, that also is given by default to the NCIC, which is the nationwide database maintained by the FBI that every single law enforcement agency in the country, state, local, federal, accesses when they pull you over, run your license, do background checks, anything that's checked. And it's listed. Some of you may have seen that in your discovery. There was documents that listed a suspected member of a terrorist organization. So that comes from the original inclusion in the Terrorism Screening Center terrorism database. So I think that is ripe. I mean, that's going to require obviously someone with the authority to get that information and friends in Congress or whatever it may be. But I think that's something that I think they are shaking in their boots about their use of the terrorism watch list.
I think that's huge.
To that point, Jared, I know part of the watch list, they put a lot of us on the quiet skies list, and then I guess going back to what Dr. Gold said, would it be, what type of infraction in a sense would that consist of for us to be able to go, and whether it is a bond or whether it is, straight Bivens lawsuit? I'm not sure exactly which one or how that's going to work, but what, do we need to make sure we have all our, every time we flew, every single one of our, our ticket stubs and make sure we line that up? And then would that be going after the head of the FDA or the TSA? What's kind of like the next move in that? Because I know that hurt a lot of people.
Like Dr. Gould, I think it starts with collecting evidence, right? All as you mentioned, your boarding passes. If you tried to check in online, you can't. Like a screenshot. I took screenshots when I tried to check in on the app and I couldn't. I would save that screenshot. I've got all my boarding passes. Whatever you guys, some of it we can't go back and it's too late to get. But if whatever you have, keep and document. I'm not from. I mean, I've heard of the Quiet Skies now from X, but I'm not familiar with that myself. That must have come after I left. And I think that's. It seems to me. I don't know this, I'm speculating, but it seems to me that that's part of a TSA or DHS program, like maybe separate than the Terrorism Screening Center, but I don't know. But all that's going to become clear at some point. It's just, I agree with Dr. Gold completely. At this point, get whatever you can, save whatever you can, write down details. I've kept a running log this entire time, and I've got everything that I thought was important throughout this, because I knew this day would come eventually where the truth would be revealed and these people be running for the hills. So that's I second Dr. Gold's recommendation on that.
Evidence is going to make the difference now. And by the way, I think some leeway will be granted us if we have a lot of evidence, but not all the evidence. For, you show a whole track like Jared, the entire group is going to be indebted to you if you've kept the best records. I've kept a lot of the Quad S airline slips, so I have them. But once you show it with one person, you could at least either be believed on the others or shift the burden of proof to the other side to show that they didn't do this. So some of us will have some good evidence, most of us will not, but that's why every single person is important to think through the evidence you have. One of the pieces of evidence I keep hammering on is the transcript. If you think the judge or prosecutor lied or said something irretrievably biased, but others are like these Quad S lists or any other harms that you directly suffered. Jared, I had an interesting question, just if you know the answer, because it may have happened to other people. In addition to putting me on the Quad S, they actually put my minor son, who had nothing to do with J6, and a couple people I worked with who had nothing to do with this. Does that indicate to you what they called us, like internally? Like, I don't know what they could have said about me that would have empowered them to feel they should go after my minor son and random people who I don't know, but who happen to work in my organization. Or captain.
Yeah. And again, my experience is a bit dated. I left in 2017 and things have changed, and I've never heard of the Quiet Skies. So that may be something different, maybe a lower standard. But to be included on the terrorism watch list, I can't fathom how somebody related to somebody is included because somebody else is. That just makes no sense to me. There's supposed to be a very specific allegation or threat. I'm going to send out some documents. The FBI has on its website a 9-page document that talks about the terrorism watch list and how it works and how you be included and how it's justified. In my case, in my discovery, and this is actually two quick points. Like one, I know our discovery is gone because those databases, they didn't give us hard copies, and they retracted it, I'm sure. But if you can get discovery from your attorneys, I don't know what's available or what's allowed to be released to us, but I've requested everything from my attorneys. But I think that's important. On the protective order that you all know, I never signed it. I refused to sign it, and I'm going to contest that. We made a motion, and the judge ruled against us, and we lost. So I was bound by it, but I never signed it. And then finally, like 3 months later, the government conceded that they would have to give us the evidence. But I'm going to try to get everything I can, because there's things in there that are important. For instance, to John's point, so if you're on the terrorism watch list, you're also listed in NCIC as a potential terrorist group member. So if you get pulled over, the cop thinks that that's what you are. Right. There's also FinCEN. It's a financial crimes network. If you notice, some of you, if you tried to send PayPal and it took 30 days for the PayPal delivery to go, that's probably because of FinCEN. The National License Plate Reader System. So there's license plate readers throughout the country at bridges and sensitive places. They can connect all that. They can add your license plate to that. I hit that somewhere. I drove and I guess I crossed one of those somewhere. And we got in discovery the information, and it included my status in the terrorism watch list, which triggered this. It also gave a code. So we looked up the code, and there's specific criteria that are supposed to be met in order to be included in the terrorism watch list. Well, there's a third category, which is like, exceptions to those standards or something like that. Right. Terminology. So it's the arbitrary list. But I think that comes from discovery, right? So again, Dr. Gold is spot on. They've purposely engineered this from the beginning to be able to yank it back at some point, but we need to collect now whatever you can, because it may one thread may lead to something else. So it's important.
Can I jump in? And thank you guys so much, because just to respond to the questions, some things are useful as evidence against judges and some things are not. And I'm not saying that everyone should, be able to understand ahead of time, you should look more broadly. But questions like jury selection, for example, we know it was garbage. That's not really something that we're going to be able to impeach a judge on. It's too fact specific on a case. We want words that the judge said that a judge should never say. Examples could be if they called you an insurrectionist. That's, I think, something we can bring them up on an impeachment. If they lumped you in with other defendants, which most of the judges did that. The prosecutors did that. They lumped us all in as one group. That is not our judicial system, where the defendant in front of you is to blame for other people, unless there's a conspiracy between, you know what I'm saying? And that wasn't most of our situations. So a judge saying insurrectionist, a judge literally from the bench saying words that lumped you in with other people, not your case. A judge saying something that indicated that he predetermined your result, the result that he's going to determine. A judge saying things that are so factually inaccurate as to be inconsistent with being a judge. Like in my case, saying 5 people died, that's the kind of examples that would help us in a judicial impeachment hearing. And similar to a prosecutor, but they get a little bit more leeway than a judge. A judge simply cannot do that. That's the kind of information we want. Thank you.
Dr. Gold, you had mentioned your son being on that list and co-workers. What I've noticed is that anyone that booked a flight with me as well, for that flight, so not necessarily if they were going on their own. Like I went to Texas and I had one of the actresses and I were on one ticket heading there. She got searched. On the way back, they booked her a different ticket and she was completely fine. So I know it had to do with, like, if you're connected with them, they're like, all right, now everyone on that list, we have to double check just in case.
So I would like to do discovery and find out how that happened, because I've heard of situations like yours, and mine was much more than that. Like they extended it outward, and it went on for years, which was crazy. Wow. I almost understand if you're just flying with the person, I would give that a bit of a pass. But thank you very much for that.
Wow.
Dr. Gold, can I make one comment just about the judges? Just one example. My judge twice in 2 separate hearings said that he wanted to finish my trial before the new administration could come in and make a new prosecution decision.
Excellent.
And then that was in October. And then my trial started January 8th. And in the pre-trial conference, he said he was going to rush or push this trial to not waste time, to ensure that it finished before the prosecutors would have a new leader or a new boss who might make a different decision. And
these are great examples of things judges are not allowed to do. So is everybody listening? Not everything they say is good, helpful in getting Congress to do an impeachment hearing. A judge saying he's trying to rush a result because there's a different political option going forward.
Yeah, but it's not political.
Gold.
But we promise it's not political.
So just again, everyone, I'm harping on this. I'm harping on this because we will win or lose based on you finding words that show that the judge was hopelessly biased. He's not allowed to be biased against the defendant in front of him. Please look for those words. Thank you.
David Summerall, thank you for joining us today as well. We'd just love to have you welcome to the group and mention anything that's on your mind based on what we've covered today, particularly, in light of evidence and kind of sharing stories and helping to amplify the message of resetting the correct understanding of this story.
I won't chase any rabbits. No, listen, I just want to say you're on the right track. These judges' statements exist. I personally have a handful of those transcripts. I'll be talking to you as well. But when they make these statements, the J6ers themselves are familiar. We'll work with the other attorneys as well, because they remember these. And a lot of the attorneys have transcripts sometimes, even when the defendants don't. So we'll start that process, continue the process of collecting. But the federal judges, y'all imagine this. If this is the real problems in society, when it gets to that level, you can't win. What if Trump had the opportunity to, replace all of these federal judges with lifetime appointments, conservative values, and then Pam Bondi takes out all these bad AUSAs and we get real, attorneys again, good people in these positions? We'll own the Justice Department. It's critical and crucial that we finish this job. So I appreciate seeing everybody in here. I haven't been much of a part of this, but I want to help provide this information. We have it. We've been there. I've been in 10 trials. I've listened to the lies. I've watched the perjury, and these judges say, well, we'll get by that. We'll get past this. And these are all real things that can help in these cases, you know, and I'm proud to know that we've got a lot of people that have been collecting this from day one, because it was obvious to us before it was obvious to the world. So I'll reach out to my contacts as well. I'm sure we can get you a couple of dozen statements pretty quick with transcripts, and really, this has been my focus, guys. I want these judges to go down for what they did to these people. The judges sent the FBI to my house when I said they deprived people of their constitutional rights. Instead of coming to my house and asking me why I said it, why don't you investigate the judge that did it? So I think that's where we are. So if we can help Trump replace all these federal judges, that's going to be a biggest win for us. And then it's the trickle down. We'll get everything else we want after that. But thank y'all for all this work. I know it's not easy. I know you'd rather be off celebrating the pardons in whatever way. I want to add to this real quick. You might not want to take your pardon yet if you have an appeal that is still pending. The appellate court is freaking out right now because several people said, no, I want to continue on. And the appellate court is saying, no, these judges did this and we don't want to take the heat for it. So I promise you this house of cards is falling down around them. And we just need to lean in on it. So thanks for inviting me to the thing today.
Absolutely, David. I thank you. I appreciate you. Knew that you'd be a wealth of knowledge there that I think Dr. Gold will pull into. Go ahead, Dr. Gold.
First of all, about your appeal, I think John has a question for you on that, but I've noticed your website for a while, David, and it's fantastic. And I really would like to work with you on this, because gathering the evidence and putting it forward. And I didn't want to say it to the groups. I'm glad you said it. Absolutely. The goal is to get these judges removed and a whole bunch of other judges in, right? So do you see where we're going with this? We can't let this happen again. And I don't know how we live with the District of Columbia. Just, you know, I rarely go because I never, ever again want to be before a DC judge because there's no fair trial. There's no, right? So David, want to work with you. And then John Strand did have an appeal and he was planning to keep pushing it after the pardon.
I am.
But the DOJ dropped it. It's been dropped. So I don't think he can proceed on that because
they didn't drop the appeal. They vacated the charges. That means I win the appeal by default.
Yeah, they vacated the charges. Sorry.
Does that stop you from going in there and just, you know, presenting your case on appeal then too?
Well, I mean, I'm appealing the charges, and then the DOJ just came in and said, "Oh, never mind. We're going to rescind the charges." So there literally is nothing for me to appeal because I have been cleared of the charges never existed.
So now you can't go into court and present your evidence of their lies.
I can charge them essentially for falsely accusing me.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we do. That is one of the legal questions on the table: is a criminal charge against various DOJ people. Right. So
in addition to at least a civil charge for being falsely accused and having my life destroyed, when I just was proven in court that none of them ever actually were valid. The DOJ literally rescinded the felony after Fisher and then rescinded for misdemeanors after January 20th inauguration.
And actually, if they rescind and you know, Jared or Captain Chris, you guys can tell us if they rescind, but all the stuff happened to you, isn't that them admitting to, like, isn't that didn't go straight to the civil point of like, we rescinded, sorry for breaking your door and here's some money. You know what I mean? Like, isn't that kind of basically how it moves? I'm not 100% on that.
You touched on it already. And so that in particular is where we get into Bevins. It's a lot more complex than that when we talk about criminal vice civil action. But that's when you start to dovetail into the Bevins action. And it ends up being very complex at that point.
The answer is I don't know. Some lawyers do think that a criminal action could be considered. I will just share with you that Tom Fenton of Judicial Watch believes so. No, he's not an attorney. He's not our attorney. So it's not dead yet. But all of this requires more conversations with more attorneys. If anybody has worked with criminal defense attorneys who they think very well of, very smart, dedicated people, please shoot me an email because we definitely want to include them as people to talk to.
Something that I wanted to caveat off of what it's been mentioned a few times, and I've seen it in the comments here and what Jared spoke about, was restorative justice. one of the things that allowed the DOJ and the federal government to do the things they did to us was the Patriot Act. And so when we talk about restorative justice, we're talking about the USA Freedom Act, which expired in 2020, but they extended it to allow them to designate us as extremist groups and terrorists. So those particular criminal actions, as we're talking about, leading into civil action, using the cover, and I say that the cover of law, and the Patriot Act is not even law, but using the cover to go after us and label us as extremists, use us in the Quad S, the Quiet Skies, TSA. All those actions are interconnected, but it's very complex, but they ultimately tie to the Patriot Act and the USA Freedom Act. So there's a lot of different ways that we could go about this, but when we talk about restorative action, that is one thing that we need to ensure that we look at, because if we don't, it's potentially, it could happen again, right? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's a great point, Captain Cooney. And Dr. Gold, we have a pretty interesting opportunity to consider that in light of the executive order that President Trump signed banning weaponization. Again, I need to read that more carefully and understand it fully, but depending on how the language is structured there, that could give a lot of runway for us to basically say the administration needs to review what Captain Cooney just mentioned and essentially reverse it or eliminate it or carry out the executive order to prevent weaponization, because that's clearly what's happening, right?
That's the way I read it, John.
Many other things.
Chris's point is spot on. The protections to prevent abuse of the powers from the Patriot Act and the related acts that have followed is minimal. And the number of people required to start the process for a defendant to be labeled as an extremist or terrorist is very low. It can be done at a very low level in the FBI by a handful of people. And that starts the chain reaction, which leads to where we are. It's interesting for me to look back in hindsight and see how things worked and how they were ripe for abuse. But I think there's a gold mine here to explore.
This is why a small subgroup of people who are really interested in the legal is so important, because we can brainstorm a little bit. Like, I never really thought of that, about just trying to reverse the Patriot Act, which is terrible. So we need to think broadly.
Yeah.
I think these cases can help to bring that up. That's kind of the
Could I add?
pretty amazing.
I think President Trump might be on the same page or caught up to us a little bit when he was talking about the weaponization of the DOJ. If you remember, everyone's charging documents in the beginning say we're a part of a violent mob that descended on the Capitol.
Yep.
This our event was weaponized against us as a mass, as a mob, as they want to call us. So there may be already some thought toward, what happened to us. He was not hesitant to pardon everyone at the end of the day. So maybe he understands that the entire day, the entire system, and the entire Justice Department as it is in whole, because he was getting these stories from people like Mickey and others along the way. So he may be a little more in the know. I'm not saying stop working at all. I'm not saying lay down or any of that, but I'm just saying when everyone's statement said they were a part of a violent mob that descended on the, and that's not the case with the grandmas or the individuals or the people that showed up later, all these things. So we see how that works, and just bear that in mind, that the big picture things are as important as the smaller details, because they were used on everyone. And I think that will add up more at the end of the day as well.
I'm wondering, Dr. Gold, if we maybe sort out some ideas about how to how to coordinate some various people here in the group to focus on specific projects.
I'll tell you right now, I would humbly request that Captain Chris, Jared Wise, and David Summerall and myself get together and be like a little sub-legal, first to make sure that we've looked at all the big pictures of what could happen and, think strategically about the long term. Like, we'd like to replace all the DC judges. We'd like to look at the Patriot Act. That's like very long term. To the immediate short term, we got to get the evidence, but I would welcome the three of you on that. And again, equally important is going to be the comms, which we just haven't really talked about so much yet, but I need that. We all collectively need a little subgroup of legal to move forward, and I extend that invitation to the three of you.
Yeah, I think Captain Cooney, Jared, and David, you guys have all mentioned interesting and smart ideas about certain topics that we might want to be addressing and communicating to the public through the We Are J6 vehicle. So I'd love to kind of brainstorm on how we can accomplish that and execute in an efficient manner.
I would love to. I'm sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead,
just
Jerry.
I should say that Bethany and Chad have written in the chat. They both have AI experience, and I do think helping us search transcripts using AI would be very helpful. So looking forward with Bethany and Chad as well.
Yeah, just to follow up on your thought there, almost like like committees, right? Like a technology committee, an evidence committee, a legal committee, a communications and media committee. I think that would be a good idea. There's a lot of resources and talent in this. They screwed up. They
did
pissed
screw
off
up.
a bunch of people that have a bunch of broad talents across the country and their own networks and they've emboldened people. I put it on Twitter. They'll never scare me again, and I'm sure that speaks for most of us. So
That's right.
Huge mistake.
That's right.
That's right. Absolutely.
Sarah, is it okay? So Sarah has agreed to be point person for the emails that would be coming in. I'm going to, again, remind everybody, this is total volunteer. People have other things to do with their life. So try to be, direct and not abusive towards writing things, right? For venting purposes, that's not the kind of emails. What we need is information. We need legal information like transcripts, dates, things that people said with proof. She'll then get it to like the legal subcommittee. When we get into comms, she'll get it to the comms. But I just want to make sure that everybody, knows everybody knows Sarah. Everybody knows what she's been through. And John, I think we should talk about the comms too, because that's something every single person on this call can jump in on.
Yeah, of course. Just to remind everyone, we have transitioned these weekly panel discussions to be public facing and inclusive for the general public. It's actually a really critical part of what we're doing here, especially when it comes to the communications part and the messaging and the exploring of various policy ideas and so forth. But anyone watching the broadcast right now, presumably you are familiar with the website, but please share it everywhere to everyone at wearej6.com. It's a very simple, right at the homepage, register 2 ways. So if you are a former defendant and now J6 patriot, as I'm going to call us, there's a defendant registration there just for those people. And then there's an advocate registration for everyone else. So if you are a former defendant and you've registered as such, we have your contact information and we'll email you directly from a defendant's email. And then otherwise, the general public will receive communications via an info at wearej6.com and, of course, via the social channels. So we encourage you all to continue sharing and amplifying all of that. But we will get Sarah situated to kind of understand who is reaching out from the former defendant class for those that actually have cases and are going to be assisting in various ways, whether that's AI assistance or general activities related to collecting and organizing evidence, and then some of these other subcommittees that we may, develop as we go here. So, did you have anything else on comms, Dr. Gold, that you were specifically thinking of? I did mention previously, I'll reiterate, that we did send out an email. We'll have additional emails going out to the former defendants group about the persecution testimonial. That's going to be really important. This was inspired by one of our founding steering members here at We Are J6 is Brandon Struck, who's the founder of the Walkaway movement. And of course, we saw incredible impact from many, many people creating testimonial videos about their experience in that context. So we're going to collect those from you and package them in a way that kind of allows the country to realize this is all part of this group and this topic in a way that's really powerful. So it's important to be getting those created as well. So I hope you guys have seen the email. We'll again send it again and try to make it pretty simple for you to kind of go through a formatted list of questions so that we can keep the testimonies reasonably tight so that people will actually watch them, but informative and impactful. So that's a really key priority this coming week, is getting those videos starting to happen. Dr. Gold, I know, will also kind of flesh out a more specific list of written or text-based items for a persecution summary and table of harms type thing, and get that emailed out as well, so people can submit that in an organized fashion on the website. So those are the comms items immediately that I'm aware of for this coming week. In addition to, of course, one more time, just to encourage everyone, it's so critical to grow this group, to expand this tent, the umbrella, both in terms of the former defendants themselves, particularly when we get into discussions about civil litigation, damages, lawsuits, class action, etc. Those have a lot of complexities and nuance, and it's so critical to have discipline and wisdom, and that's what we're seeking to foster in this group. So we want to encourage everyone else to come and join us in that effort along those lines, as well as, of course, encouraging the general public to support us in amplifying the stories.
A couple quick, John, you agree that the best email, if people have evidence they want to submit or comms that they want to submit, is defendants@werj6.com?
Yeah.
Great.
But that's intended only for former defendants.
Yeah, exactly. So we've split the email into defendants. So again, these are volunteers who are managing this. So try to make your email really substantive. Like, here's the transcript. It's on page 72, September 13th, right? And or the comms that we want to submit, defendants@werj6.com. And just a word, because John sort of alluded to it. I am, as I said, a little bit more optimistic about us being able to be a class than I was prior to the president. This is just based on my general legal knowledge. I don't have any specific reason. I just think, the definition of being a class is there has to be enough commonality in the class that a judge says this is a class. And many lawyers prior to last week thought that, oh, our cases are all so different and they're all, everyone has different fact patterns. There's no way this could be a class. And I remember thinking, but every lawyer pretty much said that. Now I look at how the president said it, and I personally think a judge will say this is a class. That's not the last word on it. For example, like maybe we could get a class that's heard in Florida, or Texas, where a lot of people were from. That would be way better than in DC. All I'm saying is it's all up in the air. But at some point, if a class action proceeds, it's up to the judge to pick the class. And we would like this to be the class. I know that the four of us who got together initially, which was John, Brandon, myself, and David, and then Sarah joined right away, and then Siaka and the others, right? This is a group that will be thoughtful, that will be respectful to all, that will be inclusive, and humbly, I would suggest, would be a very nice group to put in front of the American people. And therefore, the more people that join this, I think the better for all of us. So I second what John said, which is please spread the word to other J6ers that this is a good thing to at least come in and listen next week and decide. We don't want any, and I see some as infighting. You hear how we speak. We do not attack other people. We are not interested in infighting. We are not interested in leaving people out, okay? But we're interested in presenting a beautiful vision to the American people of beautiful people who the federal government attacked. That is what we want. And we want hundreds of us, hundreds of J6ers.
And the lawyers need to understand that it's not us that's trying to make a class. Biden made us a class. We're J6ers. And they did that to us for 4 years. We're separate. We're not the same. We're different. We stand above. This is, I think, why Trump's on our side in that respect. And while we have this momentum, folks, I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish.
I just want to say, yeah, I know, but the judge gets to decide. So if the judge looked at our individuals and said, oh, this guy's too different from this one, but I just think the way Trump wrote it, a judge would have a hard time doing this. And to answer the question, jurisdiction questions, venue questions are always, it's up to a judge to rule on it. But what we hope for is to present a compelling case and that we have settlement conversations. So it's not even up to the judge. Like, that is the hope. The most logical place to bring this case, unfortunately, is DC. Not saying it's not possible to bring somewhere else, but certainly there wouldn't be any possibility, I think, of hundreds of people in another jurisdiction, because you'd have to have the people living in that jurisdiction. So I do think it's probably going to be DC. But again, the goal is to have a settlement with a friendly DOJ, not really to go to trial with a DC judge.
Right. So yeah, we've been discussing these kinds of strategies for weeks now. It's why we called We Are J6 a strategic alliance. That's exactly what it is. And the strategy is complicated and it happens over various conversations and at various levels. But it's still in development right now. Clearly, what we know for sure is that essentially all options are on the table. The momentum is clearly on our side, like David just mentioned, and it's growing fast. So let's keep that growing. And what all of us can do right now is remember the importance and the centrality of the story. So every one of us has a story, and everybody's story is incredibly valuable and important. We want to capture those on video. We want to document and substantiate them with paper receipts. We'll continue talking more about that over the course of this week. Thank you, Jared and Captain Cooney, specifically for comments on that were super helpful. And we'll work with Sarah and some other volunteers to get things, continually further organized. But we have so much in front of us, so much potential, and so much work to do, even just this coming week, primarily regarding the collecting stories and the amplifying of the mission and the message. So hopefully there's a lot that we can do with that already, just with the website and social channels that are out there, and working on collecting those persecution testimonial videos, and doing the research on your own, thinking through what happened to me, where do I find the records and the receipts for this, in terms of general harms and suffering over the course of everything that happened, in terms of unethical actions, illegal actions that were done by government officials at various levels, ultimately ending with what the judges did and all of that stuff. So be thinking through, researching, preparing, and then we'll continue on this week with the specifics. Did anyone else have questions, comments, concerns at this point? We are about at that hour mark. Actually, we're a little beyond.
Hope you're enjoying your freedom.
Right? We actually didn't even really get a chance to celebrate, other than we did pray at the beginning and praise God for an incredible victory. But we really should just acknowledge one more time, thank you, Jesus, for truly the greatest victory of my entire life. Not even close. I imagine you all feel the same way, but I've just been trying to absorb the 48-hour period of January 20th, 21 and 20th and 21st. There aren't really words. I mean, it truly is a miracle. I've been thinking about how Dr. Gold and I have worked together as colleagues for 4 straight years or so. I guess coming up on 5 years. Oh my God. And so we were co-defendants. We were both arrested and charged and all of this, in the course of working in a professional capacity, et cetera. And then, not only her, but my whole family and my whole team, I have many lawyers on my team. I literally over 6 or 7, probably reached 10 by the time we got to the appellate phase. I mean, I had a lot of attorneys working just on my case, but I went all the way to trial, of course, in the Supreme Court. But anyway, the point is that 4 years ago, everyone said, like, there's no, like Brandon loves to say, there's no winning here. It's just, how do you lose the least, and considering a plea deal, but we stuck through it for 4 years. And now my lawyer's about to send me the confirmed notice that the DOJ vacated my entire case. It's like, you guys, we won. We didn't just drag across the finish line like, oh, we're here barely breathing. I mean, we won. And that's just incredible. It's so impossible, but we serve a God who makes the impossible a reality. Right. And it's just watching President Trump acknowledge that God so powerfully, with such courage and clarity, and no apology, no surrender. Like, we are a nation in God we trust. Like, that was just, I'm so excited. I can hardly stand myself. So it's amazing. It's an incredible,
hey, John.
incredible, just moment in history. And we are so honestly just blessed to be a part of it, and to be alive right now. What a moment. So please, anyone pitch in anything else if you have before I close this out. I'm just really grateful you guys are all here. And of course, our audience, which, by the way, I have the counter here. we've reached almost 5,000 viewers on the live stream over the course of the afternoon here. So solid start. We're going to look for a lot more next week and try to get as many of these, 1,600 J6ers into our group here as we possibly can, so we can unite and empower this army to accomplish the mission, deliver restorative justice.
Hey, John, based off of what you just said, I want to leave us with one thought.
Yes, sir.
When we look in the Bible and God's word, we look at Matthew 5:11. God blesses you when you are mocked and persecuted and lied about because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great award awaits you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted too.
Amen.
Amen.
And oh man, that's so great. I want to give a shout out to old David Summerall there. I remember when this guy has been in the weeds, collecting data, putting stuff together out of his own pocket, going, driving to different forums to make sure that the J6 story was still getting out there. And I will never forget our conversation we had, and he brought up Ezekiel 33. He was like, "Did you read it? Go check it out. Go check it out." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And it ended up talking about the watchman on the wall and how when God gives you a message, it's up to you to share it. If the sword comes and the person doesn't listen, it's not on you. But if you didn't share it and the sword comes, their blood's on your hands. So I do feel that he was saying, like, us J6ers were the watchmen on the wall. So Dave, I just want to give that shout out to you, man. You've been just amazing during this whole thing. And
I appreciate it. Lord, God gave me everything that I needed for the job. You know what I'm saying? And I just am honored to have fought alongside so many, real patriots. And I think the Boston Tea Party people would be jealous right now. Just saying.
Yeah. That's the way to look at it, David. That's the way to look at it. I mean, 1776 2.0, and the second round is better than the first. So that's going to be true of President Trump.
Now we know what we could lose. You know what I mean?
And this is, I love to call it a red pill revolution. That's my little term. And we are so embarked on that. That is igniting right now in a big way. I'm super excited. So amazing. David, thanks for all your work. As Siaka said, absolutely just epic. Honestly, couldn't have done this without you. And there are many others like that. There are just so many people that have blood, sweat, tears poured in to this community and to this effort. Shout out to Brandon Struck and Derek Evans, the other guys on our steering committee who couldn't make it today. Hopefully we'll get them back next Saturday. Just going to sign off now with all of you guys saying thank you. God bless all of you. God bless every J6er in this country. God, real quick, will you just pray your mercy over the, I forget the number, maybe 10 or 14 folks that are still held hostage with the last remaining vestiges of the corruption, but we're going to tear that down. God, we believe in Jesus' name, you're going to release them as soon as possible and get them home to their families. Thank you for healing and protection and grace over everyone that is coming home and all the J6ers that are just reaching out to support that community. Thank you for this wearej6.com movement and everyone that's here and a part of it. We pray your blessing and a continued expansion on this and that you would deliver victory to us in Jesus' name. We love you. We just bless you. And we ask that God, you bless the United States of America. Amen. And love all you guys. Proud of you. So grateful to be soldiering next alongside of you. And we will see you next Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern.
Good.
Please don't hang up, John.